Record. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Slave Ages podcast. On this very special episode for season 5, I have composer, guitarist, producer, all around arranger, prog master Joe Bailey. And Joe's going to talk about his new album, Splinters, which just came out. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
Great, thanks. I'm looking forward to this interview. I
Good, yeah.
love your work. I think your last album that I covered was Devil in the White City, which I think was last year. And
Right.
that album was breathtaking. It was scary. It was driving. It was very musical. You had so many great elements going on there. And it was one of my favorite albums of 2002. Then when I heard about Splinters, I was really intrigued because it seems like just yesterday you released Devil in a White City. So tell me, when did you conceive of Splinters?
I think I was writing the music for Splinters probably as I was releasing Devil in the White City. That tends to be the way I tend to get the itch during during the releasing stages. It always happens. So I'm always writing all throughout the year, but I got the itch just after Devil was released.
Oh, wonderful. So for Devil in the White City, you had a specific theme going on. The album talked about, really followed a famous serial killer, and it was from beginning to end.
Yeah.
With Splinters, is there such a cohesive theme as with Devil in a White City?
No, not well. I suppose there's some sort of like linking themes lyrically, I suppose, but there's no actual concept to it. I think the lyrics are probably they're quite personal, but I, I tend to have a style of writing lyrics. I think that's why with Devil in the White City, it was so different because I had a story to stick to. But this time, I just wrote whatever came to mind.
So you've had a number of solo albums. I think your first major release was The End Comes Too Late in 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And like Night and Day 2016, Night and Day 2017, A Price to Pay 2018, Less Than Nothing 2019, Ghosts, which I think was the first album I bought from you 2021, then The Devil in the White City. Has your process with regard to composing changed since you started with The End Comes Too Late?
Um, Probably not actually. I think in terms of on the production side of things, a lot's changed. I think I'm quicker at arranging tracks, and I'm quicker at realizing whether I'm going on too long. I think with the earlier stuff, there was so much music there that was just kind of going on, and I didn't know when to stop. Whereas now I can kind of be a bit brutal with myself and remove stuff that is going on a bit too long. And so my writing is a bit more disciplined now, but my actual approach to writing is very much the same as it was back then. I'd write all my music and then the lyrics follow. I mean, The End Comes Too Late was a concept album as well. But if you listen to that album and listen to the new album, the change. I mean, I've done a lot of work on my mixing and production side of things. So the change between the two is just drastic.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I've listened to The End Comes Too Late, and all your albums are available on Bandcamp because that's where I picked up the last three of them, and that's a wonderful platform to be able to listen to the music and buy the music. In terms of you talked about the production a little bit and the writing. In terms of your playing, have because you play almost every instrument on your album, all the major instruments you're handling, and it seems to me as if especially your guitar parts are pretty intricate and your bass parts are wonderful, but your keyboard parts, especially the last two albums, have been so detailed orchestral. Has your playing changed since The End Comes Too Late?
Uh, yeah, I would definitely say so. I think all around, I've improved because been playing for such a long time now. Keyboard wise, I've never been a great keyboard player. I've always been able to, have a little play around, but most of it's programmed. I will program all the orchestration, everything. So if there's a line that I can hear, and I will just play it on the keyboard. But normally it's all written down on a piano roll or on Guitar Pro or something like that. But definitely my playing's got better. I mean, recently I've been suffering with I've got rheumatoid arthritis, so the joints in my fingers are starting to really affect my playing. So like I have tried to simplify things to make that easier for me, but I think on this new album I got away with it because I did a lot of guitar solos that were quite melodic, and I enjoy playing. I think it's easier for me to play lead lines than it is to do intricate chords and things like that.
Hmm. I did mention that you play with Mark Anthony Kay on the Dark Monarchy. You've done a few albums with him, and one
Yes.
thing that I love about the Dark Monarchy is, oh, your bass playing stellar, but the keyboard parts also are, I think, step it up another level as well. So that's good to hear that you've continued that. It's just hard to believe that you simplified it because it sounds so full.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole orchestration and everything. I love that big, massive orchestra sound. So that will never disappear from my writing. So that will always be complex and very in your face. But in terms of my actual physical playing on the guitar and the bass, sometimes I have to tone it down depending on how I'm feeling. But
Mhm.
I do try. Splinters turned out brilliantly. I'm so happy with the way it ended, the way the guitars and the bass sound on that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Splinters has 9 tracks on it. It's a fantastic combination of sounds. Your vocals are stellar as always. Let's start with the first track, which is Full Frontal Eulogy. Tell me a little bit about that song, how it came about lyrically, and also some of the instrumentation.
Okay, so I'll start with the instrumentation because that came first when I was writing. I was just trying to think. It just seems like such a long time ago now. Um, oh, so it's quite a long song. I think it's about 8.5, 9 minutes.
Mhm, mhm.
That introduction was originally supposed to be on like it was played as a clean guitar line, and then I was flicking through various effects and I accidentally put it onto a distorted sound, and then as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Oh, I've got to keep it like that now." So it changed the whole dynamic of the song as well. And then later on, there's that so many time signature changes in this. Like I think it's 7/8, 9/8, a lot of 9/8. Weirdly, it's not really a time signature I use a lot, but I went a bit mental on this, and then all those brass sections as well. Yeah, lyrically, it's about how it's basically how the general how do I put this without right, so how people generally can't really think for themselves anymore, and that things like the media and social media um, are just throwing things at you and telling you how to think and telling you what to believe, and it's just basically me moaning about the general way people are being brainwashed in the way that I do.
Well, your albums lyrically are all pretty poignant. So there's always something going on beyond the music, but it's also hard to get beyond the music because it's so well done. And with this, you have that section where you have those stacked vocal harmonies, which
Oh
really
yeah, yeah.
works well, which I thought, I mean, just your vocals are always strong, but how you did the harmonies were fantastic. And then how the synths built, that's wonderful. I love that song. I'm not
Thanks.
sure it's my favorite. I think Matricide is probably my favorite on the album. What about that?
So Matricide, I think, was probably one of the very first ones I wrote for this album. Um, and I think I don't want to say typical, but it's very similar to my previous works. I think it's a Joe Bailey sounding song. It's got everything you would expect from me. I think um, it's quite heavy. I think the whole album's quite heavy in comparison to previous works. I know Devil in the White City was ridiculously heavy for me, but yeah, Matricide. The lyrics are about basically how we're destroying the planet. I have written about this before with the Dark Monarchy, so it's no new territory for me. But I wanted to write um, a song about how we're not doing enough collectively as a population, and how I fear that it could be too late.
Yeah, there's
This is
nothing I mean it's pretty direct lyrically.
yeah,
And if you go onto the Bandcamp when you're buying the album, you can see the lyrics obviously. But it and your vocals are also pretty clean, so you can hear what you're saying. But you
yeah,
have on this song this wonderful synthesizer wash intro. Then you have really like you mentioned the focus lyrics with regard to what we're doing with the planet ecologically, and then these two, I think they're two different sounding guitar solos with
yeah,
melodic, and then you have melodic and clean. You have a little dirtier solo, I think, towards the end.
yeah. I just so I did the first solo, and then the second solo, I was like, what? Well, I need to do something totally different to make it stand out. And then I just tapped a load of things, and then it just that was what you hear was what I came up with. It was
Oh
like, oh,
wow.
that's great. I'll keep that then. I love it when that happens. It doesn't happen often either.
Yeah, I heard the first one, I said first solo, and I said this is fantastic. And it wasn't, I mean, it was very melodic. Then the second solo was like much more, even more aggressive. I said this is fantastic. So I love the
Yeah.
combination. If I could just geek out a little bit and ask about the gear on this song in terms of what guitars were you using? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I'm using the guitar I've used since the debut. Actually, it's a Schecter C1 Classic, left-handed. It's got lovely. I'm trying to think. It was called Pearl, Mother of Pearl. It's got Mother of Pearl inlay on the
Mhm.
fretboard. It's a beautiful guitar. I've never had any reason to use anything else because it's perfect
Wow.
for all my needs. I have other guitars. I've got an 8 string there that I've used, like at the beginning of Matricide. Actually, um that that was on the 8 string
Uh-huh.
just to get those really low notes.
Fantastic.
Um, and then I go direct in and then I use plugins. I don't use any amps or anything. I've never been I've just never been what's the word I'm trying to use? I've never taken enough notice of like that technical side of things because it just doesn't go in. I just plug in and I mess around with the plugins until it sounds good. So on this particular album, I was using Easy Mix
Okay.
2. I was using mostly presets, but I did tamper with them a little bit.
I mean, if you can get the sound you want, and it's easier in your ears too when you go to rag. That's perfect. I mean it
Yeah,
sounded wonderful. What about your basses? Because I know you're quite an accomplished bass player.
yeah. So I've got it's actually a copy I got from China. It's a copy of the Music Man Bongo 6. It's a 6 string.
Okay.
Um, it's the same bass that John Mayung uses from Dream Theater, but he uses the 5 string version, I think.
Hmm.
So it's that same one. That's the only bass I used on this. I have got a fretless as well, but it's very rare that I get that out. I've used that on Project Gemini in the past when Mark's had me playing bass for him. I used a fretless, but
Hmm.
I just tend to use the 6 string because it's perfect, and I tune it in a similar way to a guitar. So I'd have the top string as a F sharp, and then the bottom string as a B. I can't remember, but I can do like three octave scales in like one position,
Wow.
just to make my life easier. But yeah, it's cheating.
Very good. So the next song I have on my list to talk about is I Myself and Me. And the note I
Yes,
wrote was a change in your vocal approach for that song. I wonder what I
yeah.
meant by that. Talk to me about the song.
So it's a very very fast song, very like almost like dance, sort of like dance music. I wrote this song a long time ago. It must have been about 11 or 12 years ago. And I always liked the verses and the choruses in the original song. So I always wanted to maybe come back to it. There's quite a lot of old songs that I've written that I will revisit, I think, because there's just too much stuff that I've written that I haven't used that is too good not to use. This was one of them. In fact, I've done it a few times on this album, so I will get to that. Um, but with this one, yeah, definitely. But I've just brought the lyrics up to date a bit because the lyrics that I wrote originally were a bit naff, a bit rubbish. So I brought it up to date with how I am now. But I kept the sort of dancey feel, but I made it more appropriate to uh, now.
I mean,
uh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say lyrically, it's about social awkwardness. You know, how just being awkward in general around other people. That's what the whole song's about.
I I I, I love the feel, and it's kind of what do you say? A palette cleanser between the prior songs because it does have a different feel, but it still works in the context of the album really well, and musically and lyrically is so strong. It's again one of my favorite tracks, which is why I picked it out.
Oh, good.
And the next song on my list is "The Long Haul," which I
Yes.
wrote down as epic.
Yeah, it's just a long one, about 11 minutes. So, like I was saying before, this is another one that was I wrote that original intro guitar part, the verses and the chorus melodies and riffs. I wrote them. I was looking through my folders in 2007.
Wow.
So yeah, and I was listening to it. I was thinking, this is great. I need to maybe use this. So I used the verses and the choruses, and then I rewrote all of the instrumental sections.
Mhm.
So originally the song was clocking in at about, I think it was about 6.5, 7 minutes, and then I revisited it about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I added all that ridiculous instrumental section in the middle, all the like the chip tune and all that. So I added another 3 minutes onto it, so I knew it wanted it to be an epic one, so that's why I revisited it, and I had a lot of fun making that instrumental section. It's great.
It Joe, it shows. I mean, it's very musical, it's very venturesome, it's very aggressive. It works really well. Now, you talked earlier about how'd you put this? That you had a lot of I'm taking this out of context probably, but you had a lot of different pieces when you were writing this. Do you mean that there were some songs that you decided to cut a little bit, edit a little bit, or do you mean you had a lot more material for the album than you used?
So I was using a lot of there was a lot of songs, sorry, that I'd written a long time ago that I wanted to revisit. um I'm trying to think. You mean like I was when I was saying I've got more discipline with things?
Yes, that's what it,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Because I tend to go on a bit with music with the instrumental sections, and I think I've developed a technique now where I can sit there and take a step back and say this is going on far too long. So I need to, and I'll just be brutal with it, and I will just highlight the section, and I'll just hit delete, and it's gone, and then I'll just that's it, and it's no turning back. Then I'll hit the save button so I can't go back.
I mean, I can't imagine being able to get to have the discipline to get rid of some of those solos or solo parts or
Yeah.
keyboard parts. Because wow, that's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, well, it's to be fair, it is normally I'll normally do that if there's like one riff that's gone on has repeated far too many times. So it will be a riff that's remained in the song, but just
Mhm.
not quite as
Oh, wow.
ongoing as yeah.
All right, the next song I have on my list is "Time Is Killing Me," which is a little bit more than 7 minutes.
Yeah, a bit heavier as well. Well, I think the whole album is quite heavy. I mean, I'm going in that direction now. I always thought of myself as a just a prog rock outfit, but more and more people are telling me that it's straight up prog metal. There's no there's no two ways about it. So I'm happy to accept that. I do like my heavy music, so it was bound to make its way in somehow. Time is killing me. Uh, so that's again has a very strange section in the middle where it goes into is it? I think that's 9/8 as well, and that was also a section that I wrote a long time ago. I've always wanted to use that little bit, so I stuck that in the middle. The rest of it was a new song. I wrote this all on the guitar because normally I would write things on the keyboard or I
Mhm.
would write it on the computer, but I wrote this whole song on the guitar, which was unusual for me. Seems to be an approach I'm taking more these days. I think it's just to keep me fingers moving.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a completely different um, approach writing on the guitar than it is to writing on the keyboard. I never really realized until the past couple of years because it was the same with Devil in the White City. I wrote a lot of that on the guitar as well, but before that, it was always on the keys. So yeah, time's killing me. I'm trying to think what the lyrics are about. Mm,
Pull that up.
I think it's just about the general shortness of life, really. How life is too short. uh yeah, I think how you and how like say when you're at work and you're wishing the day would finish and
Mhm.
then you the next day you're thinking where's that day gone, you regret the time that you wished away. That's pretty much what that song's about.
Yeah, pretty deep lyrics. The first verse says, "I wish you hours away, but then mourn my loss the next day."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that goes to what you were just talking about. So the
Yeah.
last song that I picked was "Salt in Our Wound," which uh, it's pretty amazing. Again, synth work as well and guitar work.
Yeah, that was I think that was the last song I wrote for this album actually. And it was changed a lot as well because I had the song finished, then I was not happy with the the bridge or the chorus. So I rewrote the entire bridge and chorus, and then I rewrote the instrumental section as well. So a lot of it changed.
Mhm.
And I also rewrote the lyrics as well because I hated the original lyrics I'd come up with. So it was from what it was originally. It was the melodies are mostly the same vocally, but it was a whole different beast beforehand. It was changed for the better though. This was all fresh material. None of this was rehashed old works.
Mhm.
Um, Unlike No Man's Land, which is next, that was No Man's Land again was another really old song that I wrote again around that 2007 era. And I wrote that on the guitar just by moving one shape up and down the neck. That was the intro to that. And I just all I did was rewrite the lyrics and change the pianos a bit on it. And then that was so last minute. Like the album was 8 tracks for months and months and months, and then I just slipped that in track 9 at the end there. I mean, it's a lovely way to end the album as well. Back to Salt in Our Wound. Sorry, that's about the government.
Uh-huh.
That's quite usual for me. That's just me moaning about yeah, us getting shafted by the government at all times.
Again, like I said, I mean, you're not subtle with your lyrics. They're pretty direct, but they
Yeah,
still are, they're not preachy. They're very engaging. And with Salt in Our Wounds, uh, that piano intro, wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a great
yeah, that was
intro. Yeah,
yeah. And then that whole synth passage in there, I absolutely love it. So I hit on a few of my favorite songs. Are the ones that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
um, I suppose obviously the song Slug. I would I have to talk about that
Okay. Yes.
just because it's so ridiculous. Um, I I had an idea about a year ago to write a song from the perspective of an insect. That was that because I was going through my notes and that was one of the notes. So I was like, right, okay. So I was trying to think of an insect that would be funny or engaging enough to write about, and I couldn't think of any really. And then I thought, what if I try something different? And then I thought, a slug. And I did extensive research on how slugs live. So everything in this song is pretty accurate in terms of how a slug lives and breeds. And yeah, and even down to the effect I put on the voice, I thought,
Yes.
how would a slug sound if it could speak?
That's what I wrote. The vocal approach of that was really unusual.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's a bit silly and things, but the lyrics, I'm so happy with those lyrics. Some of the finest lyrics I've ever written. And also, it was a pleasure to get my sister Charlotte. She's helped out in the past, but she came
Yeah.
round and put the trumpets down for that section as well. So that was fun.
Yeah, I noted that because you are a one-man band, but I did see Charlotte on this song. I know she's worked on some of your other albums too.
Yeah,
But
yeah. She's very musical. So she's if I can get her to help on the albums, I will, because she can give insight on other things, not just the playing as well. So yeah, she's great. Yeah.
that's fantastic. What other songs do you want to talk about that I didn't mention?
Oh yeah. So I am the enemy is the song after no, it's before Slug. Sorry. I just wanted to say that song was completely electronic. I didn't play any instruments on
Oh,
that song.
okay.
Yeah. So I wrote that in. I sat down at my computer and I was like, what should I do? So I thought I'll write something, and I wrote that in one session. It was just all synthesizers. And then I added the drums later on, but even the bass is all programmed as well.
Hmm.
I wanted to just see if I could write an electronic song without any instrumentation, and I did. And again, it's kind of different for them from the rest of the album, but it kind of fits in nicely and breaks it up a bit. That's why I put Slug and I Am the Enemy just in the middle of the album, and then reprised it with songs that are kind of more like me.
Yeah, how you sequence the album's perfect. Um, I didn't ask about the drum program, so what were you using for drums?
Um, yeah, Easy Drummer. I use Easy Drummer, the Metal Machine drum kit, and then I've been using a software called Perfect Drums,
Mhm.
which I use just for bass drum and snare drum. I just use that to beef up the Easy Drummer, so I have them playing in unison. I use all the cymbals and stuff from Easy Drummer, but I just use Perfect Drums just to beef up that snare and the bass drum. It's it sounds big and beefy without me having to do too much processing to it, and I don't have to EQ it as much because it kind of already comes EQ'd and ready to go. So I'm not messing around with the drums, and I can focus on the melodies.
Right. Yeah, it works really
Yeah,
well. The
yeah.
rhythms are great. Like the guitars are incredible. We talked about the keyboards already. I like the diversity in terms of the songs that you've picked this time. So I know that you are working on or worked on a Dark Monarchy album with Mark Anthony Kay. What's next for you?
Yeah. So in January, me and Mark are going to start the writing session for the fourth Dark Monarchy album. So that'll probably take a few months. So that it normally happens for about 3 or 4 months, and then the album's normally out and around June, July time. So expect that then. And then I have already started writing for the next album, but it's early days yet. Nothing that I am overly keen on, but I'm sure some of it I'll use. I'll be writing throughout most of the year until I've got a good solid lineup. Sometimes I'll write between 15 and 20 songs, and then I have to narrow them down to 8 or something like that. I mean, I can't go on forever. I'd be making double discs otherwise. What else in the pipeline? A CD version of Splinters will also be available at some
Great.
point. The guy who does my artwork, Steve Holland, he did the cover for this, but at the moment he's incredibly busy with 2 other projects, so he hasn't been able to do any of the layout for the booklet. So I'm going to have a go at it, which
Wow.
I have. Yeah, I've been using. some may frown upon this, but I have been downloading AI images based on the lyrical passages and based on the artwork that Steve's already done. So you can put images in, and it'll use the same colors and sort of. So it's looking really good, actually. I'm quite pleased considering I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to like Photoshop or anything, but I've managed to make it look good. So it was either that or wait until the end of next year. And so I've actually had people asking about the CD, quite a lot of people. So
Yes.
I don't want to keep them waiting any longer. So I thought I'd
Because
give it a
I
crack.
think I got Ghost and Devil in the White City on CD, and because I'm even though I know the player, I
Yeah,
like to have the physical copy too.
yeah,
And the artwork for especially Devil in a White City and even the cover for Splinters is excellent. So
yeah,
the CD makes a big difference. That's good to hear.
yeah. So Steve sent me two different front covers for this album, um, and he was like, so the one that you see now is the one that he sent me first. He's like, but I've also got this one. So he sent me another one. I was like, what am I going to do now? It was like I was like, I don't know which one to use now, so I had to go away and for 24 hours and think about it. But I ended up choosing the one you see now. But the other one is there now queued up for the next album, so the artwork's already done. at least now I can look at that and maybe base the songs on the image that he's already provided me with, which is an interesting approach. Something I've never done actually. I've never used artwork as a sort of medium for writing or composing. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
Might
that'll
do
be
that.
fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking forward to the CD. I'm looking forward to the Dark Marnicky album. Is there anything else you want to add?
Um, no, I think that's it. I just want to say thank you very much for having me on here because it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for supporting me for over these years, and to everyone who's listening as well, and anyone who hasn't listened to me yet, listen to me. I think you'll like it.
It's hard charging, it's hard rocking, it's thoughtful lyrics, it's great instrumentation, great production, great vocals. I am glad that Mark Anthony Kay turned me on to your music. And I love the album, looking forward to the CD and the next Dark Monarchy album. And I'll reach out to you again once the Dark Monarchy album comes out and we'll chat a little bit about that. Joe, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
That's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And let me just, let's see. Let me